First, we're going to walk through a series of real betrayals and power plays. Byzantine emperors killed by their loyal friends, Chinese rulers who disarmed their own generals with wine, modern politicians who turned sworn enemies into their safest allies. Only after you've seen the pattern in history will we reveal the brutal truth it's been screaming at us the whole time. Your friends are often the ones who quietly weaken your power, and your enemies are the ones you can sometimes trust the most. Don't take this video as me telling you to avoid friends. Not at all. Friends play an incredibly important role in your life. But tonight, we're going to expose the hidden dangers that come with them. In the mid-9th century, a young man named Michael III takes the throne of the Byzantine Empire. His world is already stained with betrayal. His mother, Empress Theodora, has been forced into a nunnery. Her lover, Theoctistus, has been murdered. Behind this conspiracy stands Michael's uncle, Bardas, intelligent, ambitious, and ruthless. Michael is young, inexperienced, and suddenly sitting on a very dangerous throne, surrounded by schemers, killers, and corrupt courtiers. In this chaos, he needs someone he can trust completely. His mind goes to his closest friend, Basilius. Basilius has no background in politics or statecraft. He's not a general, not a minister. He's the head of the royal stables. But he has something far more important to Michael: loyalty. The two had met years earlier in those same stables. A wild horse broke loose and charged straight at Michael. Basilius, then just a young groom from poor Macedonian peasant stock, jumped in and saved the emperor's life. His strength and courage stunned Michael. In an instant, Basilius was pulled out of obscurity. Michael raised him from simple horse trainer to head of the imperial stables. He showered him with gifts, titles, and privileges. The two became inseparable. Michael sent Basilius to the finest school in Byzantium. The rough peasant slowly transformed into a polished, educated courtier. Now Michael is emperor, and he needs a loyal right hand. Who better than the man who literally owes him everything? Ignoring the advisors who urge him to trust the far more experienced Bardas, Michael chooses Basilius as his chamberlain and chief counselor. He believes he can train him for the job. He loves him like a brother. Basilius learns quickly. Soon he's advising the emperor on almost every matter of state. But there's a problem: money. Life at the Byzantine court is dazzling. Gold, silk, banquets, status. And the more Basilius sees, the more he wants. His appetite for wealth and privilege grows. He's always short of money, always wanting more. To keep his friend satisfied, Michael doubles his salary, then triples it. He grants him noble status. He even marries Basilius to his own mistress, Eudoxia Ingerina. A shocking gesture, but to Michael, worth it to keep his most trusted ally close and content. For a while, it seems like a fair price for loyalty. But new tensions are brewing. Bardas, now in charge of the army, is powerful and respected. And Basilius begins to whisper in Michael's ear. Bardas is too ambitious, dangerously ambitious. Bardas thought he was the puppeteer. He helped his young nephew Michael onto the throne, believing he could pull the strings from the shadows. If he put the boy in power, he could always put him back in his place. He was wrong. As Bardas grew comfortable, another man moved in close. Basilius, the former stable boy who had risen through charm, talent, and calculated loyalty. Day after day, Basilius whispered into the emperor's ear, feeding Michael doubt, resentment, and fear. Slowly, the idea took root. Bardas was no longer an ally. He was a threat. So a plan was set. During a grand horse race, with the crowd roaring and the dust rising from the arena, Basilius slipped through the masses toward Bardas. In the chaos of celebration, he drew his blade and struck. Bardas fell, murdered in the very spectacle he thought he controlled. Soon after, Basilius stepped into the empty space he had created. He asked to replace Bardas as head of the army, presenting it as a way to protect the empire and keep order. Michael agreed. Why wouldn't he? This was his loyal friend. From there, Basilius's power only grew. He gathered wealth, influence, and allies in the army and senate. Years passed. Michael, meanwhile, drowned in his own extravagance. The emperor's finances collapsed, and desperate, he turned to the one man he believed he could always count on. He asked Basilius to return some of the money he had borrowed over the years. Basilius said no. Not only did he refuse, he did it with a look, bold, shameless, almost amused. In that moment, Michael finally understood his position. The stable boy he had lifted up now had more money, more soldiers, and more loyal supporters than the emperor himself. A few weeks later, after a night of heavy drinking, Michael woke up to the sound of boots. Soldiers surrounded his bed. Basilius watched as they drove their blades into the man who had once been his benefactor and closest friend. When it was over, Basilius stepped forward, claimed the throne for himself, and had Michael's head mounted on a pike. Then he rode through the streets of Byzantium on horseback, holding that head high for all to see, the final, brutal proof of who truly held power now. Here's the real tragedy. Michael had gambled his life on gratitude. He believed that because he had given Basilius everything, money, status, education, access, Basilius would stay loyal. Whenever Basilius wanted more, Michael gave in, thinking it would bind his friend closer. But proximity to power changes people. Basilius saw the throne up close. He got used to asking and always receiving. Over time, he stopped feeling grateful and started feeling entitled. The favors were forgotten. In his mind, his success was his own doing. Michael sensed the danger too late. When he saw that impudent smile, he finally realized he hadn't raised a loyal friend. He had created a rival, a monster. He could still have acted. He could have cut Basilius down or pushed him away. But love, habit, and the illusion of friendship blinded him. It's hard for anyone, especially a ruler, to believe that the person closest to them is the one sharpening the knife. So Michael did what most people do. He told himself it would be fine. He stayed loyal to a man who no longer needed him, until the day his head ended up on a pike. As Voltaire would later say, "Lord, protect me from my friends. I can take care of my enemies." For centuries after the fall of the Han dynasty, China kept repeating the same brutal cycle. A weak emperor would sit on the dragon throne. Ambitious generals would gather in the shadows, plot a coup, kill him, and put a strong military leader in his place. That general would found a new dynasty and crown himself emperor. And then, terrified of being overthrown, he'd turn on his own people. He'd execute fellow generals, purge rivals, and try to secure his power with blood. But the pattern never stopped. A few years later, new generals would rise up, kill him or his sons, and start the whole thing again. To be emperor of China in those times was to live surrounded by enemies. The man at the top was often the least safe person in the entire empire. In the year 959, a powerful commander named Zhao Kuangyin became emperor and founded the Sung dynasty. He knew the odds. History told him clearly, within a year or two, someone from his own army would probably try to murder him. So he asked himself a simple question: how do I break this pattern? Soon after taking the throne, Emperor Sung announced a grand banquet to celebrate the new dynasty. He invited the most important and dangerous men in the empire, the top army commanders. The wine flowed. The music played. Everyone smiled. Then, at the height of the feast, Sung quietly ordered all guards and attendants to leave the hall. Suddenly, it was just him and a room full of heavily drunk generals. The mood shifted. The generals realized that, at this moment, they were completely exposed. No witnesses. No protection. Many of them assumed the same thing. This is it. He's going to kill us all at once. But Sung did something no one expected. Instead of threatening them, he spoke with brutal honesty. "All day long I live in fear," he said. "I am not at peace at the table or in my bed. Tell me, who among you has never dreamed of sitting on this throne? I don't question your loyalty. But what if your own men, chasing wealth and power, forced the emperor's yellow robe onto your shoulders? How could you refuse?" The generals, drunk and terrified, swore their innocence. They insisted they were loyal, that they had no ambition to overthrow him. Sung listened. Then he offered them something even more dangerous than a threat. "The best way to live," he said, "is not in constant fear and struggle, but in peaceful enjoyment of honor and riches. If you are willing to give up your commands, I will reward you with great estates and beautiful homes. You can spend your days in comfort, with music, feasts, and companions, far from the dangers of war and politics." In that moment, the generals understood what he was really offering. Not death, not suspicion, but freedom. A life without battlefields, without plotting, without waking up every day wondering who was sharpening a knife behind their back. The very next day, every general submitted his resignation. True to his word, Emperor Sung granted them noble titles, rich lands, and luxurious estates. They retired from power and slipped into a life of comfort. With one bold, calculated move, Sung transformed a pack of hungry wolves who could have torn him apart into a flock of harmless lambs, rich and satisfied, removed from all real influence. And just like that, the deadly cycle that had claimed so many emperors before him was broken. Over the next few years, Emperor Sung moves carefully but decisively to secure his rule. In the year 971, King Lin of the southern Han finally surrenders after years of rebellion. To everyone's surprise, Sung doesn't execute him, humiliate him, or throw him into a dungeon. Instead, he gives Lin an official rank at court and invites him to the palace to celebrate their new friendship with wine. At the banquet, Sung personally pours King Lin a glass. Lin takes it and freezes. His mind goes straight to poison. He falls to his knees and cries out, "My crimes deserve death. Your Majesty, I beg you to spare my life. I don't dare drink this wine." Sung simply laughs, takes the cup back, and drinks it in one swallow. The room must have gone silent. No poison. No trap. Just a clear message. I could have killed you. I chose not to. From that moment on, Lin transforms. The man who had spent years rebelling turns into one of Sung's most loyal and reliable allies. At this time, China is fractured into many smaller kingdoms, each ruled by rival warlords and kings. One of them is Shu. When Sung defeats him, his ministers immediately urge the emperor to lock this man up for life. They bring him documents, solid proof that Shu is still plotting to assassinate Sung and reclaim power. This time, everyone expects a harsh sentence. Instead, Sung does something they don't expect. When Shu appears before him, Sung doesn't throw him into prison. He honors him, treats him with ceremony, and lets him go. Before the defeated king leaves, Sung hands him a carefully wrapped bundle and tells him to open it only when he is halfway home. On the journey back, curiosity wins. Shu opens the package. Inside, he finds all the papers that prove his secret conspiracy, the plans to murder Sung, the evidence of his betrayal. In that instant, everything becomes clear. Sung knew. He knew about the plot, the treachery, all of it, and still he chose mercy. That act breaks something in Shu. The hatred, the ambition, the resistance, it all collapses under the weight of that unexpected generosity. From then on, he becomes one of Sung's most loyal vassals. There's an old Chinese proverb that says friends are like the jaws and teeth of a dangerous animal. If you're not careful, they'll chew you up. Sung understands exactly what kind of jaws he's standing between when he takes the throne. His friends in the army are powerful, restless, and hungry for control. If he relies on them too much, they'll swallow him whole. And if he somehow survives that, his friends in the government, ambitious ministers, scheming officials, will gladly finish the job. So Sung makes a radical choice. He refuses to build his empire on friends. With his fellow generals, he doesn't wait for them to turn on him. He buys their comfort and their distance. He rewards them with huge estates, wealth, titles, and sends them far away from the center of power. He doesn't need to spill their blood. He simply removes them from the game. It's a far smarter strategy than killing them. An execution creates martyrs and vendettas. A comfortable exile creates silence. With his ministers, Sung is just as careful. He knows that the ones who come to him as friends often expect favors, protection, and special treatment. Their loyalty is soft. Their jealousy is sharp. So he keeps them in check and, when necessary, lets them taste his famous poison wine. Instead of surrounding himself with friends, Sung does something counterintuitive. He turns his enemies into his foundation. An enemy who has been defeated and then spared expects nothing and receives everything. A man who walks to the edge of the guillotine and is suddenly pulled back is not just relieved, he is transformed. That kind of mercy digs deep. It cuts through pride and fear, and it binds a person with gratitude. These former enemies, like King Lin and Shu, become the people Sung can actually rely on. Not because they start as loyal, but because they've seen how easily he could destroy them and how consciously he chose not to. Over time, this strategy pays off. While other rulers get caught in endless cycles of coups, betrayals, and civil wars, Sung breaks the pattern. The dynasty he builds doesn't just survive, it endures. The Sung dynasty will go on to rule China for more than 300 years. The lesson is simple but brutal. Friends are often the ones who feel entitled to your power. Enemies, when wisely handled, can become the ones who guard it with their lives. When life hits hard, it feels natural to turn to your friends. The world is rough, and they make it softer. So when you're in need, hiring a friend can seem like the safest choice. You know them, you trust them. Why ask a stranger for help when a friend is right there? But here's the problem. You usually don't know your friends as well as you think you do. In friendship, people avoid friction. They agree just to keep the peace. They hide the parts of themselves that might bother you. They laugh a little louder at your jokes, praise your taste, compliment your work. Not always because they truly feel it, but because it keeps the relationship smooth. Real honesty doesn't always help a friendship, so it often disappears. And that means you rarely see your friend's full truth. So when you decide to hire a friend, you slowly start to discover the sides of them that were never visible before. The work exposes their hidden qualities. And strangely, it's your kindness that knocks the balance out of place. People want to feel that they've earned what they receive. Being hired because you're a friend, not necessarily because you're the best fit, can feel like a silent insult. Deep down, it can sound like, you got this because of me, not because you truly deserved it. That feeling sits in the background. It turns into quiet discomfort. Over time, it shows up as sharper comments, little bursts of resentment, flashes of envy. The more you try to fix it with extra favors, more money, more opportunities, the less thankful they become. Ingratitude is nothing new. It's been part of human behavior for centuries, powerful and predictable. And yet people still underestimate it. So it's wiser to stay cautious. Don't expect gratitude from a friend you help. Do what you do because you choose to, not because you want to thank you in return. That way, if they are truly grateful, it feels like a genuine surprise, not a debt finally being paid back. The moment you start hiring your friends, you quietly cap your own power. A friend is almost never the person best equipped to help you win. When it comes to survival, strategy, or building something big, skill and competence outrank warm feelings every single time. Think of Emperor Michael III. The one man who could have guided him, protected him, maybe even saved his life was right next to him. Bardas. Not a drinking buddy. Not a friend. A sharp, capable operator. Michael didn't use him properly, and he paid the price. Work is not a family dinner. Any serious project creates a natural distance between people. You're there to build, to decide, to move things forward, not to collect friendships. Forced friendliness, fake or real, only hides that reality and blurs your judgment. So the real power move is this: train yourself to see, in every situation, who is actually best placed to push your interests forward. Keep your friends for friendship. But when it's time to work, choose the skilled, the disciplined, the proven. Your enemies are a gold mine. In 1807, Talleyrand, Napoleon's foreign minister, realized the emperor was steering France toward disaster. He knew turning against Napoleon was deadly dangerous. He couldn't risk a naive friend who might panic, talk too much, or expect emotional loyalty. So who did he choose as his partner in conspiracy? Joseph Fouché, the head of the secret police. His most hated rival. A man who had even tried to have him killed. Talleyrand understood something about human nature. Old hatred creates a strange kind of opening. If you reach out, your enemy will often work twice as hard to prove they deserve this unexpected trust. A person with something to prove will move mountains for you. He also knew their alliance would be clean. No sentiment, no wounded feelings, just cold mutual interest. They might fail together, or they might win together, but neither of them was confused about why they were there. The plot didn't succeed in toppling Napoleon, but the signal was sent. Two powerful enemies suddenly united, and that alone helped fuel the growing opposition to the emperor. From then on, Talleyrand and Fouché worked together with ruthless efficiency. Whenever you can, bury the hatchet strategically. Turn an enemy into someone who serves your goal. Abraham Lincoln put it simply, "Do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends?" This logic isn't just historical theory. In 1971, at the height of the Vietnam War, Henry Kissinger became the target of a bizarre kidnapping plot. The conspirators included famous anti-war priests, the Berrigan brothers, along with several other priests and nuns. Instead of hiding behind security, Kissinger did something unexpected. Quietly, without telling the Secret Service or the Justice Department, he invited 3 of the alleged kidnappers to meet him on a Saturday morning. He sat them down. He talked. He told them he planned to have most American troops out of Vietnam by mid-1972. By the end of the conversation, he had completely disarmed them. They handed him kidnapped Kissinger buttons as a joke. One of them stayed in contact for years, visiting him more than once. This was not a one-off stunt. Kissinger made it a habit to work with people who opposed him. Colleagues even noticed he often got along better with his critics than with his allies. Why? Because enemies keep you sharp. Without people pushing against us, we soften. We grow lazy, complacent, unfocused. An enemy at your heels forces you to refine your strategy, tighten your thinking, and stay fully awake. That's why sometimes it's better to keep certain enemies exactly where they are, as enemies, rather than rushing to turn them into friends. You use their resistance as fuel. Mao Zedong built his entire philosophy of power on this principle of conflict. In 1937, when Japan invaded China, the long and bloody civil war between Mao's communists and their bitter rivals, the nationalists, was suddenly interrupted. Some communist leaders argued, "Let the nationalists fight the Japanese. We'll step back, recover, and regroup." Mao disagreed. For him, struggle wasn't a distraction from power. Struggle was how power was created, tested, and maintained. For people like Mao, conflict is not a problem to escape from. It is the battlefield where clarity, loyalty, and strength are revealed. That's the deeper law. Don't drown yourself in friends who make you feel safe while quietly diluting your power. Learn to work with the competent, even when they dislike you. Learn to extract value from enemies. And above all, let resistance sharpen you instead of breaking you. On paper, Japan had no real chance of conquering and holding a massive country like China forever. Mao understood that. He knew that sooner or later, the Japanese would be forced to pull back. And when that day came, he didn't want his forces soft and out of practice. So he treated the war as a brutal training ground. Every clash with the Japanese became a lesson. Every ambush, every retreat, every small victory turned his poorly equipped fighters into a sharper, tougher army. Instead of avoiding a powerful enemy, he used that enemy to harden his own people. The strategy worked. By the time Japan finally withdrew, Mao's forces were no longer just a scattered guerrilla movement. They were experienced, disciplined, and ready for the next phase of the struggle, this time against the nationalists. Years later, a Japanese visitor tried to apologize to Mao for the invasion of China. Mao stopped him and said something surprising. Should he not thank them instead? Without a strong opponent, he explained, no person and no movement can truly grow. Behind that one remark was an entire philosophy of power built on constant conflict. First, never pick a fight you're not prepared to win in the long run. Mao could challenge Japan because he believed that time, geography, and global politics would eventually push the Japanese out. The risk was enormous, but the long-term odds were on his side. Second, if you have no clear enemies, you sometimes have to create one. In politics, Mao would turn rivals, and even former allies, into targets. A visible opponent gives your followers something to push against. Third, you use that opponent to define who you are. Mao encouraged open rifts with both the Soviet Union and the United States. Those conflicts drew a bold line around what Chinese communism claimed to be. In his eyes, without a clear them, the people would slowly forget what we stood for. A sharply drawn enemy can do more for your cause than 1,000 speeches. It gives shape, urgency, and story to your struggle. So the man who seeks power does not panic when enemies appear. He expects them. He uses them. Each conflict becomes proof of his strength, building the image of someone who can be trusted when the world feels uncertain.